everybody's busy these days. You want to be able to interact with the NHS like you do with your banking app, right? So we've got the NHS app to do some of that. We want to have a consistent experience. That means we need to bring everything about you as part of that journey.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul-Gabriel Urma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you're an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hi Ming, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you, Raoul?
I'm doing great. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. You're an amazing leader, and I can't wait to have a really interesting conversation together. To kick us off, Ming, I'd love for you to maybe tell the audience a little bit what your role entails. So you're the Chief Digital and Information Officer at NHS England. Would love to, in a nutshell, what does it involve?
Yeah, so I've got two roles at the moment. The digital thing is really bringing together digital data and analytics so that we can help transform the NHS. I think it's actually a real opportunity, a privilege to bring those things together, because previously we had quite separate digital work and then data work. And obviously to help transform the NHS, we need to bring those things together to work in unison. So I've been given the opportunity to do that, which is fantastic.
Amazing. I wonder, where does that passion come from? You know, this intersection of, on one side, technology and data, on the other side, you know, delivering real impact to people. Where do you think the passion comes from?
The values of the NHS are fantastic. It's an absolute privilege to do things at the scale that we do at the NHS. So now it's really how do we garner everybody and make sure that the experience for every patient is as good as it could be.
That's really inspiring to hear, you know, the combination of obviously leadership capability and technology, but, you know, channeled into a personal passion to drive impact in the country. So thank you, Ming. Well, I'd love to take you now to your journey, right? Like, you know, you've clearly, through your transformation journey over the years, there must be important lessons that, you know, you've acquired along the way. What would be like maybe one lesson that you've learned from leading the tech transformation in the public, but also private sector previously?
One of the key things, sounds a really simple thing, it's actually not about the tech or whatever. It's actually just listening to what the problem is and being a bit more curious about what it is that's creating the problem. Because, I don't know, 60-70% of the problem will not be technical. It will be about how human relationships work. So I think over the years, I've learned a lot more about how we behave, how we learn in order to solve problems. And then it becomes a team sport, doesn't it? Because you can't solve it as one person. So I think combined with listening, bringing the right people together, and then having a bit of a technique. So my consultancy background actually helps in kind of breaking down the problem, trying to understand where the common patterns are and how do you then carefully orchestrate the right people into the room so you can have those diverse conversations, both, you know, in health, it'd be the frontline people, it'd be, you know, clinicians as well as operations people, administrative people, understanding the pain points so that you can then solve the problem. You know, years ago, we used to call it, you know, how do you improve lean or whatever the process. I think at the moment what we're trying to do in this space is how do you bring the best to bear to solve the problem as quick as you can. And then technologies move so far, so fast, you can always apply that solution or some assets to solve those problems. So I think it is listening. It is really being curious about what the common problems are, because you can apply solutions from one area to another if you look out for those patterns. And mostly, I think where the data comes in is the context of that issue. So bringing the right insights and the right data to solve that problem in the context, because the 20% everyone worries about is their context. Do you really understand what it's like to work in a theatre? Do you actually understand what it's like at discharge? Do you actually understand what it means for me in the front line every day when I'm banging my head in A&E? And that's the contextual thing. And that's the value of the data, because you can then say, based on those pain points, this is the process that we're trying to change. And here's the data to make it real for your context.
That's really interesting, because I was listening to one of your recent keynote at the healthcare conference. I think it was around the summer. And you made a very good point, which I'd love for you to elaborate on. You made the point that we tend to focus perhaps on standalone services, like primary care, secondary care, and admission, and kind of like look at optimizing them in a kind of like decoupled manner, which is what we like in technology, decoupling and efficiency. But in the eyes of the patient, I should have exactly that context, right? Like, what about me as a whole? What's my experience? How can you add value to me across all of the services? So can you elaborate? Why do you believe that's so important? Because I think that's quite a fundamental principle that applies in public and private sector, right? Thinking about the customer first.
Yeah, so if you think about how data is collected in NHS, it's been built around each service that people come to. So in order to do a good experience, we need to join those things up, and we need to think about it as a journey, right? And that's what consumer goods companies do really well, but they don't own all of it. The value we have and the opportunity we have is to really redesign our services in a way that is intuitive. So, we're all busy. Everybody's busy these days. You want to be able to interact with the NHS like you do with your banking app, right? So we've got the NHS app to do some of that. We want to have a consistent experience. That means we need to bring everything about you as part of that journey. And that's why we're thinking about the single patient record, bringing your longitudinal piece around you. And then, we want to make sure that by connecting that care, we have the next best action for you. So we can bring some of that predictive understanding and tracking where things are going wrong for our administrative staff, our operations staff across those different silos. So that's where the FTP comes in. And then really what we're really trying to do is connect. We're never going to have one organization that does everything in simultaneously, but we do need to have those connection points so that the jobs that we're doing are connected. And breaking down the silos is both how do you come together as multidisciplinary teams to support care for an individual in the community or in hospital, but actually having everybody having the right information to do the right things is really important to that. So breaking those silos down is just a natural thing if you want to follow the person around their treatment. And it's a necessity, because if a pharmacist doesn't know that you're having certain treatments that they don't have access to your record, trying to make them be aware of that is really important. But obviously, also for the public, I know patients that carry around massive files because they've got complex conditions, because they have to repeat their story every time. And what we're really trying to do is make sure there's a summary of their record so that can be surfaced at the right time, and they also know what's been said about them, and they also have access to better understanding of their care.
100%. Now, it feels like maybe from a implementation point of view, there's a bit of a tension, because I guess there's benefit on decoupling teams so you can like move faster independently by minimizing interaction. You can like minimize inertia. So there's kind of like there's some benefits there, but the downside is you're preventing collaboration, which benefits the customer, and in this case, adding patient value. So I do wonder what's the balance, or what's a good organizational structure that you know people can learn from here to kind of like balance out the need of the customer, the patient, versus have an efficient backend to kind of like still make progress fast. Like what's your view on that?
So I think the trick is bringing all those multidisciplinary teams together to help solve the problem, including the patients, by the way, helps to solve the problem or identify where the pain points are. Then technically we can bring the right mix of people to start thinking about how we solve the problem. And then in the background, your back office bit is how do we stitch these things up? How do we create the backbones, the core services that are efficient and effective and can be created once but used by multiple services? So it's how do you create a set of microservices on very strong core platforms, which then allow you to have that flexibility of plug and play? That's the ambition that we've got. We're not quite there yet, but that's what we're trying to do. Because the core capabilities, the way I look at it is, in most processes, there will be, if you're curious about the steps at a high enough level, at capability level, they're very similar. But the context, as I said earlier, is very different. An appointment in any setting is the same, but we've designed it differently because we've designed it in the context of that service. So some of these things is about abstracting that so that you can use the technology to feedback and interact in those systems. But, from a design perspective, we want to simplify and actually not design what we're doing now, trying to imagine what it could be with the help of technology.
Yeah, I love that. I hope you're enjoying today's conversation. If you're finding the insights useful, please do take a moment to subscribe to the Data and AI Mastery podcast and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Every new follow helps us reach more people and shed the incredible work being done by today's data and AI leader. All right, let's go back to the episode. So I guess on the topic, you've mentioned changing heart, changing mind, and embarking on this journey requires big transformation. We talked about the organization level. What do you measure? Like, I guess, on that journey, what's worth measuring? What's important?
We are changing these processes for the better good, right? So we need to have a business owner who actually says, this is how you're helping me change my business. If that makes sense. In the commercial sense, that's very common. Having the business owner for all the change then allows you to say whether the technology and the has actually helped you deliver that. And then the metrics become very part of the business metrics, whatever you're trying to solve. And it becomes very concrete. When it becomes, adoption, if we start measuring the metrics on just adoption or percentage of uptake, that's less value. That's an important metric for the tech guys, but it's not transformative of the business. So if it's speed to market, if it's reduction in my waiting list, that's to me a tangible target. How has technology enabled that? It brings us into a complication of what's the contribution of technology to that problem, and are there process changes that you do, which is, I welcome that discussion because that means we've got into the nub of it. We're not just putting in some technology for the sake of it. We're actually trying to change something, right? And together it's about a partnership and how much does technology actually contribute, because it won't all be technology. The whole point of it is we're actually doing some of those changes. In public sector, you have to go through, a 5-6 case business case. It's very formalized. It's very methodical. And then you say, what's the percentage productivity that you've gained, which is quite abstract in real terms. But so measuring some sentinel changes. So has the patient experience changed? Measuring some really concrete business changes is important. And then the pace at which we've done this is also important. So you'll end up with a balanced scorecard if you do it properly.
Great. So this makes a lot of sense. Now, how does it work when you have those more sort of a horizontal change, right? So, for example, the Federated Data Platform, which is something that's a bit more cross-cutting. So, I'd love to get your perspective around how do you make the case or how do you show ROI for the sort of maybe bigger horizontal sort of transformations?
So what the Federated Data Platform does is allows us to have a common data platform with the new technologies to do interactions, APIs, but also workflow. So when you redesign a process, some of it you want to enable through workflow. And what we think about, the way I think about it is in the logistics of care, the coordination of that multidisciplinary team and the coordination of follow-ups and all those things, you have a tech stack that allows you to work between them. So the NHS app, single patient record, FTP, they all work in conjunction. But without the Federated Data Platform, we wouldn't get as much connectivity as we would do with just those two things. It would make designing the other things on top quite hard. So there is the opportunity in FTP now. When we made the case to Treasury, we chose 5 use cases because we wanted to focus, and we could gather the benefits sufficiently against those 5 use cases in order to make the investment case. So the return on investments was based on the business change and also the use of the Federated Data Platform to create new applications that would increase theatre utilisation. It would look at population health. It would look at coordinating care and support a number of other things. So logistics of care in screening and vaccinations and the supply chain. So there were 5 quite distinct use cases that we formed a business case around. And that's my advice really. If you're using technology has a reusable capability, you'd be very clear on what the use cases are, because then that allows you to illustrate value. And then I think what we've done is we've gone into that and tracked value in each of those applications that we've developed. We have a benefits framework that actually tracks benefits as that application is rolled out.
Amazing. Super helpful. So, speaking of core capability, this is the data and AI mastery show. So we kind of like talk a bit about data. I need to take you to the AI side as well. And maybe let's start kind of high level, right? Like, how do you think about AI as a core capability in this context?
I think we've been doing some careful thinking about AI. I mean, the government's had lots of, how can we accelerate AI adoption of AI? I think in health, we've actually embraced it quite a lot. So because we've had the Federated Data Platform, there are LLMs already embedded in that platform. So that's allowed us to play and test. So we have a discharge summary tool that's been developed using AI, which basically allows summarization of everything that's happened to a person to get them ready for discharge, and then making that summary available for doctors to check and then use, and that goes into the record and it gets communicated to the patients and the GPs. So that's been really a good test. Because of the nature of where we are, we have to get that through regulation, because there's we've got to work that through with MHRA, our regulator on AI. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, we've got ambient voice technology that's actually really popular with clinicians, because that's voice to text scribing helps them take time away from their the administrative task, and it frees them up to actually look at the patients and take time with the patients. So that's very popular. We're just working through what does that mean. I think some of the other things that we're looking at now is really building on the data that we already have. So we're playing around with a assistive um AI piece, which is really helping our analysts do some of their work more effectively. So based on the data platform that we have, how do they ask the 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 the, the data we've got in the ontology? to help them create charts and other things. So again, that will be helpful. And the longer term part of that will be asking any questions. So, most people have put a chat bot on top of their knowledge base. We'll be doing that with some of our data in the future. We need to test it. We need to make sure that, those models are not moving and they're consistent. So using some of the foundational models to build some of that is kind of the focus for the NHS. It's exciting times. You can really see how AI could help people have much more of an intuitive interaction with the technology. And the
Yeah.
data, with masses of data, it's too much for any one person to be able to get across. So, structuring the data catalogs, making sure the data profiles are right. The quality of the data is really important if you're going to apply AI on top.
That's great. So in that context, do you have any advice like for or guidance for leaders out there that, are looking at supporting AI adoption to solve real business problem? Like what should they think about, or what sort of mindset would you recommend?
I think the mindset I would recommend is to be curious. There's different types of AI, so it's not one size fits all. So understanding your problems, breaking it down, will then allow you to, is it summarization? Is it, you know, scribing? Is it a chatbot? Is it assistive AI? If you're thinking about what's the assistive part of the process, I think there are some data foundations you have to have in place before you play too much. But the exciting thing with AI in coding and data is that you could also use it for some of those back office things like getting your data in a better position. We're starting to explore using AI to look at some of our legacy systems. How can we use it so that the code is raised so that we can then use it more? You can apply APIs to it, etc. So there are different uses. So I think it's exploring where your biggest bang for your buck is, where you're going to get excitement from the business, right? Because some of this is about people fearful. How do you bring people along with you? So where's your sweet spot? So is it about turning leadership into being advocates? Is it about getting your teams to buy into it? And then how do you make sure you've selected the right type of AI in that context? And then have a go. There's no harm really to have a go, and then seeing, so long as you put some guardrails around it and that you really do test the thing that you're trying to solve. So being a bit more is again, it's structured and free flow, trying to get those two things in a balance so that you can apply AI to real life problems based on the right type of model and learning.
Great. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Ming. Can I take you to a quick fire round of questions? Just short questions. Super. This is actually a big one. So if you had a magic wand, what would be the number one issue you wish you could solve tomorrow?
I wish I could solve the waiting list problem. I don't think we're quite there yet.
Thank you. And then a contrarian view that you have specifically in the data and AI world.
Probably that it's not all about the tech. It's actually about mindset. Yeah. Because if you can apply the mindset, the tech's there. If you focus on the tech, you miss the trick in terms of delivering value.
I agree with you. Next is a bit more personal. What was your favorite subject at school?
Biology.
Biology. Ah, fascinating. Next question is, what's your favorite programming language?
Ooh, I don't really have one.
Okay. English. Today, I guess English counts.
Well, yeah, with AI, English counts, isn't it? So I think if we make it, obviously you need code underneath it all, but we are getting to the stage where we want to be native, don't we? Actually, whatever language we're speaking, we should be able to apply the tech to, because that will be the intuitive way to interact with technology. So I don't really have a coding base, probably Python if you really want to push me. But
And last question, what's your favorite music genre?
I think I'm still stuck in the 90s. So, no, I don't. I like all sorts of music, actually. Some, but probably something you can sing along to.
That's fantastic, Ming. Thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Lovely to speak to you too, Raoul.
Really enjoyed my conversation with Ming today. What a really inspiring leader. There were so many cool nuggets out of our conversation. The first one is, as technology leaders, we tend to get excited about technology. We think about how to make our services more efficient, how to introduce decoupling in architecture and so on. This is great, but at the end of the day, it may not be moving the needle for your customer. In this case, let's think hard about what's the value we're adding to the patient. How can we reimagine the experience? How can we make their life better? So starting with the customer and the user first and technology after. Technology actually is an enabler. So as leader, let's focus on the customer first. The other really cool nugget was I asked her, hey, what's the mindset that, you'd recommend leaders to have in this context where AI is moving really fast? And she mentioned curiosity, experimentation, learning. Those are all kind of characteristics that you really need to embrace as a leader in order to support the organization with the AI adoption, but also for yourself to understand what's the art of the possible and get the business on that journey, right? And she made a good point. Get the business excited, focus on what's exciting for the business. So thank you, everybody. Great episode today. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.